Pankaj sir, good morning sir. This is Dr. Jawar here.
He is muted, I think.
Yes sir.
Morning.
Yes sir. Very good morning sir. Sir, do you want to check with your PowerPoint sir?
Yes. Yeah. Am I audible?
Audible sir, but you are getting echo also along with your voice sir.
Maybe headphone is better.
Sir is having headphone only sir, but
Some echoing is there, otherwise audible.
no sir, we can't hear sir.
Now am I audible? Am I audible now?
Yes sir.
Or minimum?
Voice is not clear.
Voice is not clear sir still.
Is not clear?
Voice is breaking.
Now am I audible?
We can hear you sir.
Can you hear me?
But again it's a little feeble sir.
Okay. Is it audible now?
Yeah, in between it
Yes.
was better. Again it is down.
Sorry?
Once it was better, just before.
Just let me know now.
Yes sir. It's louder. We can't hear you sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear, but echoing.
Echoing
Echo
is
is
there.
there.
Yes.
Okay.
If you're connected in two, it will come, sir.
Okay. Now it is okay.
Yes,
Still
sir.
echo is there.
Echo is there, sir.
Okay. Just 1 minute.
Good morning, Dr. Bhatt.
Good morning, Dean, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Jawar.
Our speaker is dying. There is some echoing.
Oh. Speaker I joined.
Yeah, Dr.
Yes, sir.
Pankaj Shah.
Hello. Yeah.
He is, I think, changing his setup and trying again.
Salam Medical College.
Is it okay now?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
You can try your slides also if you want.
Okay. No, is audible?
Yes, yes. Our dean was wishing you.
Dr. Pankaj, good morning and welcome.
Sir.
Pankaj, you put your video on.
Just 1 minute, sir. Slide visible now?
The slides are
Yes,
visible.
sir.
Okay. And audio is also not much with echo.
No echo.
Sir.
Good morning, Dr. Pankaj.
Good morning, madam. Good morning, sir, and good morning, everybody. Sorry for the delay. I hope now I am audible.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Where you want to start?
You please tell me.
We can, I think. You go ahead and start recap. By
Okay,
then,
sir.
some more.
Oh, okay, ma'am. One second. Right. A very good morning to one and all present in this platform. Myself, Dr. Jawahar, Professor and Head Department of Pathology, will be hosting today's program. I welcome our beloved Dean Sir, Dr. P.F. Kottur, Director Medical Research, Dr. Vishnu Bhatt Sir, Dean HPA Madam, Dr. V.N. Mahalakshmi, Vice Principal, Dr. Rajan, our Speaker of the Day, Dr. Pankaj Bisha, other resource persons, members of IRC and MU, and all the participants to the day 3 of our research webinar series titled Building Heterogeneity in Research, organized by IRC and MU of Arbadi Medical College and Hospital, Puducherry. So before we start today's program, I would like to give a small recap of the day 2 program held on 8th of this month. So the program was hosted by Dr. Manju, professor from Biochemistry Department. She's also a member of MU. So our guest speaker was Dr. Sita Raman, professor and head Community Medicine Department, KMCH Institute of Health Sciences and Research, Coimbatore. So he presented on topic systematic review, its characteristics, types, stages, and automation. So sir started explaining what is a systematic review and explained about its various types like mapping review, scoping review, rapid review, mixed method reviews, and then explained about the characteristic of systematic review. Sir also gave an explanation of why and when the systematic review is most appropriate, then explained the steps involved in systematic review. He also threw us a light on Cochrane and Prisma and other tools used for systematic reviews and limitations of systematic review, where he highlighted on QC variations, unpublished sources, low quality input research, reporting rates, and finally concluded on and about the automation in systematic review, where he insisted that artificial intelligence and neural network comes to play a major role. So the session was quite interactive with the use of polls and ended the session by taking up the participant questions. So now I would like to request all the participants to keep your mic muted. So any queries or issues, kindly put it up in the chat box. The speaker will be happy to reply to your queries at the end of the session. So today's session will be on meta-analysis in medical literature, the why and what. So before moving into the session, a small speaker introduction. Sir is a well-known personality in medical educational field. Ma'am, I'm not able to share my screen, ma'am. Right. I will go ahead with this. So, sir is Dr. Pankaj Badmilal Shah, professor and head from Community Medicine Department, SRMC, Chennai. So sir has passion for teaching and research. His main areas of interest is on topics like chronic kidney disease, cancer epidemiology, preventive oncology, cancer registration system, research ethics, education, faculty development program, core areas of research methodology and systematic reviews and meta-analysis, and evidence-based medicine. Sir is also an author and reviewer of Cochrane Systematic Review. Sir has actively contributed in research projects of ICMR, World Bank, WHO, and Cochrane collaboration. Sir has received many awards for his research work and publications. Sir is also a co-convener of MCI Advanced course at SRMC and RI Nodal Center. Sir is a FAMA Fellow. He is also a chairman, MCI SRMC Nodal Center of Faculty Development Program and a member of Medical Education Unit at SRMC Chennai. He is an invited speaker in conferences held in Japan and South Korea. Sir is a GCP City Coordinator and Executive Advisory Board Member of City India Research Ethics Program. Sir has many international and national publications, and he is also an editorial board member of many international and national journals. So this is just a gist of his CV. So over to you, sir. The platform is yours now.
Probably Dean wants to tell something.
Yes, sir. Sir, Dean sir,
Yeah.
yes, sir, a few words, sir.
Yeah, I'm indeed honored to welcome Dr. Pankaj to this platform created by IRC of AVMC led by Dr. Bhatt and his team. And this is the third one today. And we have been the very fact that, we have the participants from across the country, from about 18 states and 56 medical colleges. Indeed, we are very happy and proud. And that will be a kind of encouragement for all the speakers as well, because their thoughts are shared and heard on such a wide platform. Once again, on behalf of our management and the university at large, I welcome Dr. Pankaj for this today's session.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Jawar, I'm done.
Yes, sir. Sir, Vishnu Bhatt, sir, you want to give a small talk, sir?
No, nothing much to tell because we were going through this exercise of training our people, faculty members and postgraduates in various aspects of review and publications. As part of that, we have taken up this systematic review, meta-analysis, then other usual reviews like narrative reviews, spoken review, etc. In addition to do some qualitative research analysis. And during this period of COVID time, number of patients also less, and it is very difficult to do research with patients, not like usual situation. So I think this will help our postgraduates and faculty to publish some papers and also improve their knowledge and skill. So we welcome Dr. Pankaj Shah. He is spoken to us earlier also. He's a very good speaker and also well-learned person. So I think we'll listen to him and learn from him.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, shall we start with the presentation, ma'am?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Pankaj, sir, you can go ahead with your presentation, sir.
What I will do is switch off my video so that it is a better quality for me as well as the audience. And I request Dr. Jawar, in case my audio becomes less audible, please
Yes, sir.
interrupt at that point of time so that the continuity can be maintained, sir.
Sure, sir.
Please interrupt me without
Sir, now itself we are getting actually it's feeble and we are getting a clear voice. It comes like that.
If you are using a head set, it is better that you clip it to something, sir, so that that remains fixed in position. Otherwise, with the movement of hand, the mic also keeps moving, and
Okay.
sometimes voice is loud, sometimes it is very less. That's why.
Now it is audible.
Yeah, audible.
Yes, sir. It's clear now.
Thank you, sir.
I am switching off my chat box right now so that it doesn't disturb me in between. If any specific thing is there, please don't hesitate to interrupt me.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Uh, thank you very much. I really want to thank the AVMC, Dean Sir, Vishnu Bhatt Sir, Mahalakshmi Madam, and Dr. Jawahar, and all the audience who has come on Saturday morning between 10 onwards. And with some delay here and there, we have started, and I am sure that we'll able to finish on time. Many times, as Dr. Jawahar introduced, the first session was on systematic review, which happened day before yesterday, and it was very good on part of Sitaraman sir, putting so many questions on the next session. Now, I don't know if I get a question and I don't know which session I'll put it. Probably I'll put it to the next session, or I'll say it is for future references. Or I can say it's a homework. I know the answer, but better you search and then we'll come and discuss. So there are n number of ways where I am stuck now because there is no follow-up direct session, though there is a separate session by Nair sir on Cochrane review specifically. So I am happy that two godfathers were with me before my session and after my session, and I'll be happy, I'll be sailed through between two great godfathers. Last session when I took for AVMC, it was also in statistics. This session is also full of statistics, but I got inspired almost 2 or 3 years back by reading one of the book. It was one of the great book on statistics on very difficult modeling aspect. And one of my friend recommended that book, read it, is very nice. I vaguely remember the book had 10 chapters. And the author in the first preface wrote, and I really liked it, the book contains 10 chapters. It is on hardcore statistics. And if you read on similar topics in any other book, the first paragraph will be in text, and the next paragraph onwards, it will go into statistics and mathematics, which many people do not understand, and they lose the interest. Hence, the author decided in that book that first 5 chapters, he will write only in text to explain the basic concepts, and only from 6th chapter onwards, the mathematics and the true statistics will start. And really, that is very, very important, because in today's world, what is happening? People are running behind the numbers, P less than 0.05. They don't see here and there anything else. They just want the software, put the value, and some result comes up. Here, my personal perception is we are not here to do meta-analysis per se. Here, our aim should be understanding the basic concepts of meta-analysis so that later on, the statistical software becomes my servant to perform what I do. But many times, unfortunately, what happens? We want to learn the software without understanding the basic concepts, and not able to do the analysis in the software becomes a biggest challenge or a headache for an individual. And that's why my aim is not to make everybody expert in meta-analysis. My aim is everybody should be aware and get oriented to the basic concepts which are required for meta-analysis. And then once you know the basic concepts, meta-analysis can become a child's play. Usually, I always keep the slides less, and I do not have more than 7 or 8 slides. And I'll try to do justice with the basic concepts only. With that disclaimer, that to understand the basic concepts in anywhere, that is more important. I want to acknowledge all those people who trained me in epidemiology, research methodology, biostatistics, and also in systematic review. Thank you, ICMR and Cochrane centers who have trained me and helped me, and all those people who are my co-authors, really acknowledging them, because the discussion with them really helped me in learning. Now, this slide contains only major headings, and I will start from the previous session, which was left, saying that there is something called as meta-analysis, there is something called as systematic review, there is something called as a narrative review, or the review what I write usually. There are a lot of differences between these three, and in the previous session, sir clearly told about what are the differences. Suppose today I get up and I am very, very free in the morning, holiday, Nobody is at home. People have gone post-COVID holiday because cases are less everywhere. And I am, because of my working, I am here. And I decide I want to write one review. Probably I know, have some experience on, say, take a particular topic, say diabetes. And I want to find out what are the different modalities available in the world and in India on diabetes. I start writing the review. I have a good experience on the subject. And also I collect some references, read them, and probably in next couple of days, I'll write a review. This is the narrative review or just a review, which is based on my prior knowledge, based on my understanding on the topic, and based on my experience. Many times people write a review, the simple review or the narrative review, even without experiences, by extracting material, by doing review of literature. That is not the true review. A review should have personal experiences of the individual, which is acquired over a period of time. And that's why when you see any journal request for review or accepts the review from the people who have expertise on the subject, rather than just collecting the literature search, making the sandwich of the whole thing, or probably a biryani of the all content which I got through the different components, and write a review. That is a simple review with experience. That is very, very important. That is called as narrative review. Say modalities of treatment available for diabetes in the world and in India. Or I can say recent advances in the modalities of treatment of diabetes. And I can keep on going on. There is no shortage of the topics which I need to write. Probably there is only a shortage of time. Next comes a systematic review. Now, systematic review is totally different from the narrative review because it involves systematic planning, as the name suggests itself. And if you remember the previous session when sir was talking, he talked about the simple definition, and he's also talked about the scientific definition of systematic review. I'll try to sandwich myself between the two. It is a systematic in the sense that you plan your questions, your objectives, you plan your methodology, you write your protocol in a systematic way, and once the protocol is all decided, agreed upon in consensus, with due registration with Prospero, you go for implementation what you had planned in your protocol as part of the systematic review. And that's why systematic review is a planned methodology. Starts with the question, goes with the methodology, writing the protocol, and then finally implementation, like any other original research work what we do, and is totally different from narrative review. With that revision or refresher of the previous session, next comes is the meta-analysis. Now, if you remember from the previous session, sir had clearly defined meta-analysis is nothing but the statistical compiling or combining or summarizing the data from a systematic review. Now, why I'm using the word from systematic review? Because many times in the literature, you will see the articles which talk about a particular topic, and they will write further a systematic review and meta-analysis. Some people will write the topic and write further systematic review, and some people will write the topic and write further meta-analysis. They will not mention anything about systematic review at all. So now these are the three combinations possible when people do systematic review with or without meta-analysis. And come back to the last question, again refresher, all systematic reviews need not have meta-analysis. I am very clear and particular in the word need not. I never use must not, I never use the should not. Need not, that means it all depends on the availability of the data, the topic which is involved, the study design which are involved, and then only the meta-analysis can be decided. In the three article topics or the titles which I suggested, the first title, that is a systematic review and meta-analysis, is the most appropriate. That means the research team decided to go for a systematic review, and when the data was available and applicable, they decided to go for meta-analysis, which is nothing but the statistical combining, compilation, or summarizing the data from the various studies to get a new point estimate and the confidence interval, and decide if it is favoring intervention or not favoring intervention. The second scenario, doing systematic review, again is best, because here there is a probability in the protocol. The research team planned for the meta-analysis, but unfortunately, when the implementation happened, they got the information from the various articles, they extracted the data and tried to think of summarizing. There were some difficulties because of which they could not do meta-analysis. And when people want to do meta-analysis in each and every kind of a systematic review, the misnomer or the drawback or the wrong name to systematic review comes that we are combining apples and oranges, calling that both are fruits. So we have to be very, very careful in systematic review planning as well as in meta-analysis. The third scenario, only meta-analysis and no mention of systematic review, is totally wrong thing. It is never possible to do a meta-analysis without planning a systematic review, or in the true sense, systematic protocol, where you are systematically identifying a question based on the review of literature, plan the methodology, write the protocol, register the protocol, come to the consensus of the protocol, and finally start working on that. And repeatedly, I'm using the word systematic because the review has to be systematic to be called as a systematic review. Otherwise, it is totally waste of everybody's time. And that's why meta-analysis cannot, and also should not be performed any case when there is no systematic review. And that is the most important. But unfortunately, when people keep writing articles, meta-analysis with systematic review, people will cite these people because people are very fond of statistics. And when it comes to they many times feel unhappy when the numbers are not there in the article, and somehow they want a number. And that's why, to put that kind of analysis, meta-analysis is done without proper planning of systematic review. In such cases, the meta-analysis is useless. Even I can go to the extreme to say that is unethical also, with the scientific integrity required. And that's why again I'm coming back to the three titles which I suggested. The best one is systematic review and meta-analysis, provided meta-analysis is possible and correct scientifically to do it. Systematic review, no meta-analysis done because it was done planned in the planning but could not done because of certain reasons. And finally, the third stage, meta-analysis only, which is totally wrong. And when people keep on citing this kind of thing, at one point of time, somebody will say the meta-analysis only is the best thing. But we need to understand, systematic review without meta-analysis is good thing. Systematic review with meta-analysis is good thing. But without systematic review, the meta-analysis is a flop show. I'm still on the first line just to come back and recap why these reviews are very, very important. Now, first and foremost, in anything, we need to decide why to do that. We have come to that conclusion now. From the previous session and continuity with this session, there has to be some controversial answer. Now, suppose there is no controversial answer. Really, there is a need to do systematic review? The answer is yes as well as no. At my personal opinion, again, I am referring to my personal opinion, I will not prefer to do any systematic review when the answer is not controversial. No point understanding a systematic review. What are the modalities of diabetes available in India as well as abroad? There is no controversy. People do it. I am not against them. But my personal opinion says that I should look at the controversies where the science of systematic review and meta-analysis can be used, where some studies are talking in the favor, some studies are not in the favor, and there is no clear-cut conclusion. Those are the places where systematic review and the meta-analysis has the larger or the most important role. But unfortunately, many times people do systematic review just to understand what is happening in the world. I'll personally again prefer a systematic review to be done along with the meta-analysis if possible in the controversial statements. Now take example of any controversy which may be present. If you remember, in one of the earlier sessions, Dr. Gordon was talking about anticoagulants, and he had shown one picture of meta-analysis and cumulative meta-analysis. If you remember that picture, there was some controversy saying that anticoagulants will help or will not help. And he talked about it's the science which is important, but along with the science, the personal perception the values, those are more important in addition to the scientific evidence what we have. And that's why when we are generating a scientific evidence from systematic reviews and meta-analysis, we have to be very, very careful about those things. Now, the most important for a individual or the research team which is involved should understand when not to do the meta-analysis. Without systematic review, you cannot come to any systematic process. But meta-analysis, as depending on optional mode, optional in the sense you have planned meta-analysis always, but it is not possible because of the non-availability of the data, or meta-analysis not planned in case of a qualitative study or in an educational study or the studies where the numerical data may not be possible. Now, I have my own reservation before I go to the systematic review further and meta-analysis further, when the systematic reviews are planned for non-RCT kind of studies. Though there are groups, there is a scientific concept behind that. I will personally not prefer, I am again referring, I'll not personally prefer to do a systematic review and to some extent meta-analysis on observational studies. Say I want to find out what is a systematic review and meta-analysis prevalence of diabetes in India. I will personally not prefer, because here there is no major controversy, and also there are a lot of design issues which may be present in these kind of observational studies, which may not be possible to have these kind of design issues in randomized controlled trial when they are used for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Same way I will have reservation also for cohort studies. I will same way reservation also for qualitative studies and all kind of other studies. But there are groups and experts and science who are behind these kind of evidence to be evolved further, where the systematic reviews can be planned. Meta-analysis planning in these kind of study designs are almost not appropriate, and there can be a lot of issues when it comes to meta-analysis. And that's why my personal preference, I'll prefer systematic review. Where is there a controversy on the topic? Plan for meta-analysis and systematic review classically for randomized controlled trials, which involves drugs, which involves probably vaccines, or which involves, for that matter, any intervention. That is the second aspect. Now, next, I need to understand when I should not do meta-analysis. Now, when I decide not to do meta-analysis, now if you understand systematic review starts identifying the question, and then question revolves around, and we search in the literature as per our planned project and extract many studies. Say I have decided one topic. I'll again go to the topic of where there is a controversy. Say I'll take the topic of controversy. Drug A is better for COVID or drug B is better for COVID. Start with a simple question. And if that controversy is there, and there are some studies which are favoring, some studies which are not favoring A versus B, or A versus placebo, or B versus placebo, I plan my protocol, decide my methodology, and go ahead with the systematic review. With the whole process over, I start extracting the data. Now, in the previous session, one of the important concepts which we need to understand is the research team of systematic review. One person cannot be doing systematic review. There are need to have multiple people. Now, when there are multiple people, one group of people or one set of people or one person is experts in the methodology or the systematic review, and second group of people or the second person or the second author is an expert in the subject. That means I can be a methodological expert. I need somebody who knows in and out about, say, for example, diabetes. Because there are going to be certain issues where the clinical experience of that person is required. So now what I am going to do, I'm going to extract my data. I started extracting the articles. How I'm going to extract the articles? I have planned my search methodology. Many times people say I'll use the keywords like this or that and search PubMed. No, there should be a detailed search methodology should be planned, how it is going to be done. And once that is done, I'm going to read all the articles title. If the title is relevant to my study, then only I am going to look at the abstract. Because many times title and abstracts, there is a big mismatch. People don't write in the title what they have done, and people don't write in the abstract or article what the title indicates. And that's why after reading the title, I'll go to the abstract. If the abstract is relevant, then I'll go for the full text of the article. It is always better to go for a full text article. And again, to my personal opinion, I will not prefer to do a systematic review of those articles with or without meta-analysis where only abstracts are available because of n number of reasons available. If is a paid journal or access not possible through library, through the authors, through network, we have to get the full text of the article, then it has to be done. After that, what happens? I start extracting the number. Unfortunately, many times people want to do meta-analysis and they directly jump to the numbers and start recording their numbers either in the manual sheet or Excel sheet or maybe in the software. But there should be a proper data extraction form should be there. In the data extraction form, it starts from the title, it starts from the major highlight of the study, it should start with the design, and then only it should talk about the calculation and the number and the numerical values which are given. They have given mean and standard deviation, or they have given a relative risk, or they have given a standardized mean difference, whatever they have given. All those have to be coming only after the methodology is written. Even many of you may be aware, when we are doing a systematic review, there is something called as PICO, P-I-C-O. And that is a full important aspects when we decide our objective. P means participants. In my data extraction form, the participants is very, very important. It is an adult or it is a child, or it is an elderly group, or it is a male, female, different level of the disease, etc. is very, very important. You may be thinking why I'm talking all those things in a session of meta-analysis. Because if there is a clinical heterogeneity, you see the conference title, it is a getting the heterogeneity in research, and I'm picking that word from that heterogeneity of the main title of the conference or the program. Heterogeneity in the clinical participants will tell me meta-analysis should not be performed. And meta-analysis, I should know when not to perform meta-analysis rather than when to perform. So there are three scenarios where we cannot perform meta-analysis. One is a clinical heterogeneity. Say, for example, I get three articles. One article talks about the drug A versus placebo in diabetes. Second article talks about drug A versus placebo in an elderly patient. Third article talks about drug A with placebo among children. Now, if you see here, the P, which was an objective of PICO, P is an objective. There is a clinical heterogeneity here. How clinical heterogeneity is there? In one group, there is an elderly group, other group, there is a pediatric, and third is group the diabetic patients without any mention of the age. Now, since there is a clinical heterogeneity, the participant group are different. You cannot combine apples with oranges, calling that is fruit. And this is the first sign to decide a meta-analysis cannot be performed in case of clinical heterogeneity, and the article will remain and close with systematic review, even if it was planned as a systematic review with meta-analysis, because you never know in the beginning what articles you got it or what articles you are going to get. Second important aspect is a methodological heterogeneity. Now, as I told you, personally, I believe the methodological aspects when we are planning a systematic review or meta-analysis should be only randomized control. Personally, I do not go for other kind of studies, but all those people who are involved in various kind of study designs and their systematic review, RCT results cannot be combined with a case control or a cohort, or for that matter, any observational or qualitative study. In such cases, if I have a say only 4 studies, number 1 study is an RCT, number 2 study is a case control study design, number 3 is a cohort study design. Again, I cannot combine apple with oranges, and here there is a methodological heterogeneity. All 3 study designs which I picked up have a different kind of study design, and that's why meta-analysis cannot be performed, and it will close with only systematic review. These are the 2 prime conditions where clinical and methodological heterogeneity, which will make sure that I cannot perform the meta-analysis. And that's why when framing PICO, the participant detail, the intervention detail, the comparator, and outcome are very, very important. Third possibility of heterogeneity in methodology Let's say, for example, all the three studies are RCT. They are all the same design. Okay, randomized control trial. Take the example of multiple randomized control trial possible. Say first study I get is a parallel method where one arm gets A, second arm gets the placebo. There is one more a clinical trial possible, something called as crossover design. I hope you must have heard about crossover design, where arm A gets the drug, the second arm gets the placebo, and say after 4 weeks, there is an interchange between the two arm happens, assuming that the outcome which is obtained can be washed out after a washout period, and the first arm now gets a placebo and second arm gets a drug. Now, if you see here, there is a crossover design where first time period, first 4 weeks, person gets A and second group gets a placebo. In the next half of the 4 weeks, the groups are interchanged. In such cases, there is a crossover design. Now you just think the first article I got is a parallel design where there are only two groups, only one time period. And in my second, again, there is a clinical trial, but there is a crossover design. Now, again, I cannot combine apple with oranges and there'll be no meta-analysis done unless I have the similar study design, many articles. Say, for example, I get 15 studies. There are 10 studies with a parallel RCT and 10 studies with the crossover RCT. In that case, all crossover RCTs can be having a separate meta-analysis and all parallel clinical trials can have a separate meta-analysis. But there is no way, even if I have a small number of studies available, or even if a larger number to combine together, a parallel trial design can be combined with a crossover. In such cases, meta-analysis comes with their drawback, and there is no way, even if they are randomized control trial, a parallel design cannot be combined because of the methodological issues with the crossover design. So just coming to what we have finished so far, only in the first slide, in last 30 minutes, is to understand what is a narrative review or review, what is a systematic review and meta-analysis at the planning stage, at implementation stage, systematic review with meta-analysis, without meta-analysis, when we can do meta-analysis, and the areas, especially two areas we have discussed so far, where there is a heterogeneity or differences, or there are dissimilarities are there, and there are two prominent dissimilarities we have talked about: clinical, where the patient participants or the participants condition are different, or it can be methodological, where the study designs are different. In these two circumstances, there is no way a meta-analysis is possible. There is no way a meta-analysis should be tried. So when we extract in data extraction form the initial component of the study design, the participant detail and methodological detail, will be preparing our mind. Can we do a meta-analysis or no? Though we have planned in our protocol a meta-analysis. And that's why we need to have a reasonable number of studies of the similar clinical type, similar methodological type, to look for meta-analysis, and we cannot combine apple with oranges. At this point of time, further, I want to stop for 2 or 3 minutes and see if there are any important burning questions before we go to other scenarios when we cannot do meta-analysis.
So far, no queries, sir.
Okay. Now I'm very happy here. Dr. Yogesh has written about the PICO also. Now, in PICO, there are two important things that we should be always attached to, though many times not attached. In addition to time, there should be also attachment to the study design. And PICO should very clearly tell about what kind of study design has to be involved. Now, as we have discussed, most important to understand when we cannot do a meta-analysis, third important component is a statistical variation or statistical heterogeneity when we should not do a meta-analysis. Now, how I'm going to identify the statistical heterogeneity? By looking at the article first. We assume when we look at the statistical heterogeneity, I'm sure that there is no clinical heterogeneity or the clinical variation, and there is no methodological heterogeneity or variation. If my set of articles have a clinical heterogeneity, I should not think about meta-analysis and stop that level. Once I realize there is a clinical heterogeneity is not present. There is a similar population involved. There is a similar participants involved. Then only I should go for the next step of looking at the methodology similarity. If my clinical participants are same, then only I look at the method similarity and decide should I go for a meta-analysis or no. If clinically the participants are same, methodologically participants are same, then I will looking at the possibility of doing meta-analysis. But my clinical participants are same, but there is a methodological heterogeneity. One RCT talks about parallel study design. Another RCT talked about the crossover design. In such cases, I'll stop here and I'll say there is no meta-analysis possible unless I have a set of multiple studies where one set can be together as a parallel study design, one meta-analysis, and another subgroup meta-analysis of the crossover design separately. But nowhere the different study designs can be combined together, as we decided earlier that even in the clinical scenario, the different patient set, different levels of disease grades cannot be combined together. Once I decided, either I am doing a single meta-analysis of all studies, or I am planning to have multiple subgroup meta-analysis, even in case of clinical cases. Say I have 20 studies, 10 are diabetic, 10 are pediatric. I can have two separate meta-analysis, though I will not combine the diabetic and pediatric, but I can have one meta-analysis for a diabetic group of studies and another meta-analysis for the pediatric group of studies. Then second step, I'll see if all those diabetic patient studies are similar in methodology. If they are similar in methodology, I'll again go for meta-analysis, a single one. If suppose few studies are parallel design, few studies are crossover design, I'll again divide them into two. All parallel studies of diabetes can be a single group. All crossover design of diabetic group can be a second subgroup meta-analysis. Then come to the pediatric group. Again, all parallel design with pediatric can be another third subgroup meta-analysis, and fourth subgroup meta-analysis can be pediatric group with crossover design. So here you can see there may or may not be possibility of doing a single meta-analysis, but if the number of studies are in large in number, you can think of doing multiple subgroup meta-analysis as per the similarity present. And please do not get carried away that all my systematic reviews have to have meta-analysis. Now, once I have seen about the clinical variation or clinical differences, or much better scientific term is a clinical heterogeneity and methodological heterogeneity, third component comes the statistical heterogeneity. Now, when you see the articles are presented in a various ways, though there are standard methods where they have
Sir, Pankaj sir.
He talking to somebody. Yes, muted.
Yes, sir. Pankaj sir, your audio is muted.
no, I think when somebody muted all the participants, even I got muted.
Okay.
Okay. So now I'll stop again and start from the probably, I don't know how, probably last few minutes. Once I have decided there are multiple subgroup meta-analysis possible, clinically similar group and methodologically similar group, I have to look at the statistical component. And when we see the article, you will see a lot of variations in the article writing and the presentation. Some people will write about mean. Some people will write about standard deviation. Some people will write about standardized mean difference. Some people will write about the median. Some people will write only about the mode. Some people will write about only odds ratio. Some people will write about adjusted odd ratio. Some people will write about relative risk. Some people will write about adjusted relative risk. And whenever adjustment happens, all studies are not going to standardize way adjust all the ratios. They will adjust in a different way. Some will adjust for age, some will adjust for age and sex, and so many variations are going to happen. When you look at this, you cannot just blindly take numbers. Mean of 2 cannot be combined with the odds ratio of 2. We need to bring all those apples together and all oranges as a oranges together. And that's why I really like this statement. We cannot compare apple and oranges, calling that both as fruits, because that's a common drawback which happens in systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So if there are different ways how the data is presented, first and foremost, can we convert the data of one form into another? And that's why the hardcore statistic principle comes here. There are ways and formulas where some of the data can be converted into another form to get the data in the similar form to add up in combining the studies. But there are some ways where the data can be converted, but unfortunately the information in the article is very limited to combine. Say for example, some studies have given standardized mean difference, some studies has given mean and standard deviation. Some studies have only given mean. Standard deviation is not there. Some people have given standard deviation, but mean is not given. In such kind of a partial information, it may not be possible to convert all kind of a data in a common standardized data. Ideally, the best way to go for is a standardized mean difference or a mean difference or relative risk, which is a better way of summarizing a data rather than other modes where it may be difficult. But when these kind of a pure hardcore data unfortunately not available, the second option what I have, when I look at I cannot convert into another form, contact the author for getting the raw data. Now it may or may not be possible to get the raw data, and in such cases all those studies will be in my waiting list to get included in my meta-analysis if I get all the information. And whenever a study is not included because of whatever reason, has to be clearly mentioned. And one of the major issue when the meta-analysis is incomplete is because of the incomplete information or the variation in the availability of the data in the available literature in the public domain. And this is the third important aspect of the statistical heterogeneity. By looking at the data, forget about meta-analysis. I have not started my meta-analysis, but only looking at the data itself, I know there is a variation and there is no way I can convert one form of the data into another one. Or there is no way, even by multiple attempts, I am trying to contact the authors, but I still never got the similar kind of a data for all the things. In that case, I, looking at the data, decide not to do meta-analysis because there is a statistical data heterogeneity at present. And that's why, foremost, when I'm again repeating, when I'm planning systematic review, I will always try to plan for meta-analysis if it is not a qualitative study or a study where the numbers are not available. And at the implementation stage, I will decide if the clinical heterogeneity is affecting my study, and if clinical heterogeneity with methodological heterogeneity is affecting my study, to decide either do a subgroup meta-analysis or no meta-analysis at all. And finally, I'll come to the third aspect where I'm planning to do a statistical look at the data if one can be converted into another form or it can be combined or get more information from the authors. Second component comes by looking at the data. When I look at the data, all are given in the same form. Say all my 5 studies have given relative risk. They have given the appropriate sample size so that I can enter the data in the software what is required. Everybody has given mean only, and everybody has given me standard deviation also. Everybody has given me the standardized mean difference also what I need. That means everybody, all the studies have classically described all the data in the paper which is available so that I can do meta-analysis. But the first 2 conditions have to satisfy. That is, all studies which are getting combined are clinically together or also methodological together. Then I will apply the meta-analysis. Now, when meta-analysis cannot be done manually in today's world, probably 20, 30, 40, 50 years back, all meta-analysis were done in the manual level. And it was involving so many calculations, which was very difficult. I remember I did my first meta-analysis somewhere in 1990 when I got interested to meta-analysis, and it was really half-cooked meta-analysis because the calculation was so difficult, and one error in the calculation can lead to a lot of problems. And now with the so many software, in the previous session, sir talked about so many software. One of the common software which I like is Revman, REVMAN, which is available free of cost. In larger Cochrane systematic reviews, they use the Revman that is REVMAN. In this software, you can only do meta-analysis with respect to a randomized control trial. There is no possibility, as far as I know, of doing a meta-analysis of other kind of study designs. And it is very, very simple software like any other statistical software. You put the values and automatically the weightage of the study is given. And immediately you will get a forest plot, which last session sir was talking about, where every study will be given its individual point estimate and confidence interval. And finally, below a diamond will come, which everybody looks at diamond, that is favoring study or not favoring study. But many times people, after looking at the diamond, get happy about it or sad about it without going further. If you see below a diamond, on one side of the corner, there is something called as written as I square, which is my first line in the slide. I square is one of the statistical method. We look at statistical heterogeneity after combining the studies. It is something similar to a chi-square, which we commonly use in our day-to-day statistical analysis. If chi-square is not appropriate, we always think there is some issues with the statistics and we need to be very, very careful. Same way, this I-square value, which comes in the one side of the corner of the meta-analysis forest plot, we need to be seeing that I square value. If the I square value is less, preferably less than 10 or 20% or so, then I'm very happy of value of anything less than 10, 20 to maximum I can think of going to 30. Anything more than 10, 20 or 30 indicates that though the values are given in the similar form, the study are heterogenetically different, and that's why statistical heterogeneity may affect the quality of the meta-analysis, and we need to be very, very careful. And that's why when we read the systematic review as a critical person for that systematic review, if the protocol is planned, there is a clinical similarity, no clinical heterogeneity, no methodological heterogeneity, either as a main meta-analysis or subgroup meta-analysis, I should look at the diamond only after looking at the I square. But what happens? Unfortunately, diamond and the platinums are becoming very, very catchy. And the smaller people are never usually seen. And that's why please remember, whenever you do a meta-analysis forest plot, before looking at the forest plot, look at the corner where the I square value is there. And if I square value is not very high, around 10 or so, then be happy. The meta-analysis is reasonably okay, provided all other clinical and methodological principles are followed and the meta-analysis can be believed to. But if the I square value is very, very high, then I need to again understand, though the data in the paper is available in all the simple forms, which can be combined together, they are similar in nature, but because of the high I square, I should not use this meta-analysis because there is so-called statistical heterogeneity. And in this study, I will do systematic review. I'll probably present, I'm again repeating, probably present my meta-analysis table and say I square is very high. I will look at why I square is very high. And that's why this is called as post meta-analysis investigations. Investigation or estimation or analysis means that to find out why I square is very high, and investigating why I square is very high is most important, is more important than presenting a meta-analysis table and end the story. There is a need to have Bahubali part 2 in this, and unless the part 2 comes which tell me why I squared is very high, the meta-analysis is worthless, useless, and it cannot be done at all. And that's why I may prefer not to present a meta-analysis table itself. I will say I have combined those three studies, and after doing a forest plot, I realized that I square was very high. There is a statistical heterogeneity, though there was no clinical and methodological heterogeneity, but there is a statistical heterogeneity, and we want to investigate or evaluate the statistical heterogeneity rather than just combining the all studies and come with the diamond of the meta-analysis. And that's why before interpreting a favoring or a non-favoring intervention, we need to look at the I square. And once the I square is satisfactory, then only I should look for the diamond and all the individual studies, etc. And that's why heterogeneity has to be handled with much more caution. A clinical heterogeneity, nothing much can be done unless I have so many studies that subgroup meta-analysis of similar kind of clinical patients can be done. A methodological heterogeneity, nothing much can be done unless I have so many studies that similar methods kind of studies can be combined in a various subgroup meta-analysis. But if there is a statistical heterogeneity, even in the small groups, I should not go further. And that's why before looking at the diamond, look at the I-square. The lower I-square, be happy. Higher the I-square, be happy again. Why I'm saying be happy again? Because it has given you one more project to investigate why this heterogeneity is present, which is very, very important for a researcher to know rather than looking at the diamond itself. And that's why handling heterogeneity in meta-analysis is very, very critical and the most important. But unfortunately, if you see the review of literature, larger number of systematic reviews are not scientifically performed. Larger number of meta-analysis are performed when it is not required, and larger number of meta-analysis are performed without even systematic review. And that's why many times systematic reviews and meta-analysis get a bad name. How to handle heterogeneity? Now, the most important aspect of handling heterogeneity comes in a statistical heterogeneity, where there are different models. I will not go into detail because again, I'll go into a hardcore statistics. And when we want to talk hardcore statistics, probably 1 hour or 1.5 hours is not sufficient. There are different kind of models called as random effect model, fixed effect model, and there are ways where we can convert certain forms of the data which is available to investigate further statistical heterogeneity. But when we handle heterogeneity, clinical and methodological heterogeneity handling is most important, and then only we should think about the statistical heterogeneity. As I told you again, to repeat, a systematic review without meta-analysis possible, but there cannot be any meta-analysis without systematic review. And always remember, meta-analysis has to be planned at the time of protocol level, and only at the later time decided if meta-analysis possible or not possible, depending on the three important heterogeneity or variation or differences, classically called as clinical heterogeneity, methodological heterogeneity, and third, statistical heterogeneity, by looking at the data and by looking at the I-square before looking at the diamond. Now, usually how many studies I can combine? Many times when we do a review of literature, we get thousands and thousands and millions of studies. But finally coming to the classical controversial objective, which I'm looking at to get the answer, probably we'll have a very less number of studies. And usually it is better if I do the meta-analysis of the forest plot and the funnel plot, if I have at least minimum 10 studies, combining 2-3 studies, one with a good sample size or one with a bad sample size or all three equally bad sample size, is not worth to do a meta-analysis. A reasonable around 10 or so are the good studies. But unfortunately, what happens is when we are looking at the classical controversial point, which is going to change my clinical practice tomorrow and is very important for clinical practice, there may not be possibility of availability of 10 studies. And that point of time, we have to look at the sensitivity analysis. What happens if I would have more studies? What happens if I would have studied less studies? And all those kind of sensitivity analysis, if and but, what happens if this was like that? What happens if this is like that? And then I have to decide if the forest plot and the funnel plot has to be created. One of the classical problem which comes when doing the meta-analysis, so far I have not touched about, is incomplete data. Incomplete data, in addition to non-availability of data, also creates a problem. Sometimes for some studies, some information is given, but other informations are not given. That means if I'm doing, say, a study where I have divided the people in two groups, a first kind of a group with diabetes patient, a parallel study design where the treatment is given for less than 6 weeks. Other, my subgroup meta-analysis is there, where again diabetic patients are there. Again, parallel group of RCT is there, but the treatment is for more than 6 weeks. When I'm going to break up my data further and further, naturally the study designs are going to be, number of studies are going to be different, and the number of studies may not be sufficient to decide how much we can do meta-analysis. Another important issue comes is the publication bias. Is well known that usually positive studies are published and unfortunately negative studies are not published. And that's why many times systematic review depends on a lot of unpublished studies, unpublished material which goes into the conferences, but somehow doesn't come out into so-called publication mode. And that's why many times before we plan our completion of the systematic review, we may have to contact all those prominent authors who may be available, another group of studies which are probably not published or which were probably on the negative side. There are some journals recently which has come up on the journals of negative studies where they publish negative studies also, because we need to understand in meta-analysis the topic is controversial. Some are giving positive and some are giving negative results, and we want to come to the conclusion overall what the meta-analysis which is done scientifically talks about. And that's why if everything is on one side, there is no controversy. That means if I say drug A is good by all studies, there is no controversy. There is no need to do systematic review and meta-analysis because there is no controversy. And that's why we have to be very, very careful how to get hold of those kind of negative studies or unpublished studies or the studies which are recently conducted. And that's why one of the important component is looking at, in case of RCT, is CTRI or clinicaltrial.gov, where all the trials are registered, so that we know which are the trials which will come later phase of time or which are yet to publish or which are recently published, so that we do not miss those trials. Again, to bring that issue of other study design, though there are research group and researchers who do systematic reviews and meta-analysis with other designs, though I am personally not favor of those kind of things, and I'll prefer to avoid talking on non-RCT systematic reviews, because there are a lot of quality issue may comes up and we may land up in the problem. Next important aspect is, when we are doing systematic review, it is very, very important because we have to come out with some implication for practice. And again, I will bring to the same issue of controversy. If drug A is good or not, is tomorrow is going to help me, it has to help me in practice, or it help me in research. How it is going to help me in research? By telling them the data is not available, by telling them there are so many studies being done, but everywhere the patient is different. The similarities are not happening, or the people are using different methodologies, people are using different doses, people are using different durations, and that will be the next implication for research to plan a better study design with a classically required patient population, the classical intervention required, the classical comparator required, and finally the classical outcome looking. Because many times it happens, the published article publish only those outcomes which are positive in nature, and all those ideal primary or secondary outcomes which were thought of in the planning stage are not published, and really that can lead to a different direction, a systematic review or meta-analysis. As I told you, I'm just looking at the concept at present and not looking into different models which are required for meta-analysis. But because once we understand the concepts, entering the data in the software, applying those models, and when to apply this model is a child's play. Third important aspect we need to understand in meta-analysis is something called as comprehensive meta-analysis and regular updates. One of the problem with the meta-analysis, other than the apple versus oranges, it comes there are no updates happening. A meta-analysis which is done probably 2 years back will be worthless in case of a particular disease. A meta-analysis which is done 3 months earlier probably worthless in case of a COVID, where everything is changing so drastically. And that's why there should be some planning in the regular update of systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And the regular updates, for example, in Cochrane, they usually plan for 2 years publication, but also there is a condition. If a new study comes out within a shorter possible time, even for 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months, and is important with respect to that topic which is thought of, immediate update will be planned and immediate update will be done. And that's why ongoing studies table to look at how those studies are getting completed and published is very, very important for regular updates. And regular update need not be a fixed time based. It all depends when the new important studies on the particular topic are getting up. Coming to comprehensive meta-analysis. Now again, go back to the same webinar which Dr. Gordon had taken on anticoagulants. If I vaguely remember, he had shown a comprehensive meta-analysis. That means where the controversy of anticoagulants favoring or not favoring were started from 100 years back. And then every year new studies are getting added up. Say in 1990, 4 study got added up. In say 2010 study got added up. In 2010, say another 10 set of studies got added up. And at one point of time, when we do the meta-analysis, we realize that now there is no controversy. But unfortunately, since comprehensive meta-analysis on the basis of year-wise, as the studies are getting accumulated, was not done, still last couple of years, people are doing the meta-analysis. And that's why a comprehensive meta-analysis may be a better way of doing a meta-analysis, where the first time the controversy erupted and keep on adding the studies on year by year basis for say 5 years, 10 years. And at one point of time, we will be sure that now no longer controversy exists, and we believe that anticoagulants are favoring or not favoring. And then we give implication for practice and implication for research that no further studies are required. And that's why in many of the foreign countries, especially UK and USA, a new drug trial will never be permitted unless a systematic review of that drug is available in a condition to understand that what is the current review of literature suggests. If the current review of the literature suggests that the drug is favoring a particular intervention from either original study or the primary data set, or the meta-analysis which is done over a period of time in the comprehensive meta-analysis format, where year on or the new studies are getting up to come to some kind of a conclusion, then only the new drug trial will be permitted. If the comprehensive meta-analysis suggests that now the controversy which was existing few years back or few months back does not exist today, that means no new drug trial is required, and we have to believe that meta-analysis and go ahead and prepare a clinical practice guidelines in either favor of that drug and not favor of that drug. One of the common important question comes nowadays is meta-analysis or a systematic review need ethics committee approval or no? Now, since many times we take this kind of a work of systematic review and meta-analysis from the published literature in the form of articles, and we do not take a raw data of each and every patient, even without the patient name, in the form of an anonymized, ethics committee approval is not required. And we can clearly write in our publication of systematic review and meta-analysis, since it is depends on only published literature available in the public domain through the journals, and no patient identifying or individual patient data set is not obtained, ethics committee approval was not obtained or not required as per the guidelines. No issues. But there is something called as a patient data meta-analysis. Now again, here I will not go into technical detail, just to understand the concept. Now we got 20 studies. If we go back to our literature, we got 20 studies. What we did, we just took the published article, took the relative risk from all the articles, put in the software, decided there is a clinical heterogeneity is not present, methodological heterogeneity not present, the data appears to be all in relative risk. I entered in the software, look at the I-square is good enough, less than 10 or 20 or around that place, I decided I can use the diamond. This is my usual way of doing meta-analysis. But what happens in case of a patient data meta-analysis? In patient data, I will not go to the published 20 articles. I'll contact that research team or the author, and I'll tell them, please give me your raw data where each and every patient information is available without names or without identifiers in the form of anonymized form, and please get me that to do a patient data meta-analysis. So what I'm going to do, from the first article, say I got 100 patients without their names, without their identifier. From second article, I got 60. Third article, I got 100. So it became 260, and I will perform a separate analysis on the basis of this 260 patients, so-called anonymized raw data, and perform a meta-analysis that called as a patient data meta-analysis. It does not involve direct summary estimate of each article. It goes back to the author, get the raw Excel sheet or the SPSS or so-called a data sheet, get every individual patient data, and from all those 20 studies, they combined as a single data sheet and analyze together and perform meta-analysis. This is called as patient individual data meta-analysis. And here, since we are getting individual data of each and every patient in an anonymized form, ethics committee approval is must, because we are not solely relying on the information which is available in the public domain. Third, another type of meta-analysis is called as network meta-analysis. Now, what is the meaning of the network meta-analysis? Now, as you know, you must have seen the best example in case of COVID, multiple kind of drugs were tried. And many of these drugs were repurposing drug. Either they will available in some form earlier for some indication. Some drug had side effects, and those side effects were tried to use as a kind of a treatment modality in COVID. So now when there are multiple drugs, it may not be practically possible to compare each drug with another drug in a parallel RCT form. Usually what we do, we say drug A is better than placebo, or drug B is better than placebo, or we say drug A is better than B, or drug B is better than A. But it may not be possible to compare this kind of comparison for all the drugs available for a particular disease, classically in case of COVID. So what we have in one study, we have A compared with placebo. In another study, we have B compared with placebo. In another study, we have A compared with B. In another study, we have B compared with C. In another study, C is compared with A. Another study, D is compared with C. Another study, B is compared with D. Another study is A is compared with D. That means the classical A-B comparison or A with placebo comparison is not available, because there are so many drugs available, and it is practically impossible to compare multiple arms with so many drugs together. In that scenario, there is something called as network meta-analysis. What they do there is they try to combine studies scientifically in a proper way, where clinical and methodological heterogeneity may not be there, where A is compared with placebo, B is compared with placebo. They will try to combine A versus B in the form of a meta-analysis way. Or there is a study, the drug called as C, where A is compared with placebo, B is compared with placebo, C is compared with placebo. But none of these studies are compared with each other, can be combined in a meta-analysis format, A versus B, B versus C, and A versus C. Or we can develop a network of combining multiple drugs together to see that when there is a direct comparison is not there. I'm again repeating my important word, direct comparison. Whenever the direct comparison is not there, we are looking at indirect comparison of the drugs and placebo. The network meta-analysis plays an important role. Unfortunately, as on today, there are no easy softwares available for doing network meta-analysis, and lot of programming language to create those kind of nodes or network is required. And that's why network meta-analysis may be difficult unless a big scientific team with the greater knowledge is available. Next kind of a work which is called as overview. It is not called as a type of meta-analysis, is called as overview or umbrella view. What is the meaning of umbrella view? Now, before we go to umbrella view or the overview, we come back to the systematic review. What systematic review does? There are multiple studies published. I take up all those published studies and come to systematic review. But we need to understand, we are not the only person who is doing systematic review. Say out of 120 people here, all of us think to decide a systematic review on, say, diabetes. How a particular drug is good in diabetes. And all of us have done review. So out of 120 people, say 70 people have done different systematic reviews. And because of the different variations in our objective, in our outcome, there is a possibility, and that's why there is something called as umbrella view.
Sir, could you please mute? Yes, sir. You can go ahead, sir.
Review of systematic review. What we do in systematic review, we take the articles and look at systematically. Now there are, as I was telling you, out of 130 people, 70 people here wants to do a systematic review on diabetes. All of us may not get the similar answer or same answer, because our objective can be different, our methodology can be different, our article what we got it and what databases we use may be different. Somebody used PubMed and Google Scholar, somebody must have used Embase and Google Scholar, somebody must have used Scopus and PubMed. All kind of variations are there. So when I'm looking at the quality of multiple systematic reviews, it is called as overview or umbrella view. So if you understand the hierarchy, when we take multiple studies, we come to the systematic reviews. When we take multiple systematic review and assess their quality, it becomes an overview or umbrella overview. And this kind of umbrella overview is also important as a part of the implication of practice and research, saying that there are multiple systematic reviews are done on the same topic, and still there is a lot of variation in all the answers of the systematic reviews. Next important aspect comes is the international value of the systematic review and meta-analysis. As I told you earlier, internationally systematic reviews and meta-analysis is very, very important. Many times, many countries, a new drug permission will not be given unless the systematic review and meta-analysis done is on that particular topic. And coming back to the previous session on systematic review, when sir has told, unfortunately, when many regulatory bodies put systematic review and meta-analysis as one of the promotion criteria, people feel is just an office job. I can start a systematic review today, and within 1 day or 2 day or 3 day, I can finish. A scientifically properly done systematic review takes months and years together, depending on the topic and the availability of the information. And that's why internationally has a more value. But unfortunately, because of unethical practices, because of poorly conducted systematic review and meta-analysis, where oranges are combined with apples, calling them as fruit, the international value is there, but the individual are not getting those many importance. Again, to come back, I'll prefer to take all kind of interventions where the classical interventions of drug devices possible compared to other interventions. If you remember earlier, I talked about case control cohort study to talk about that. Personally, I believe that systematic review and meta-analysis is best done for a drug or a device intervention. But there are a number of other intervention possible. Say, for example, educational intervention or a school-based education or some kind of a flipped classroom. All these interventions can be combined as a systematic review, but may or may not be possible to combine as a meta-analysis, because first, number one, raw data may not be available, or there is no quantitative terms which have come other than the abstract science of opinion or reflection or O. Also, there is a possibility that those interventions are different. Like, say, take the example of a drug. What will happen? Suppose I plan a drug, say erythromycin. Is well standard of erythromycin, what will be the dose for adult? What will be the dose milligram or gram per kg? Or what will be the dose and duration and how many weeks strides? These kind of information in drugs and devices are relatively standard, but there's a lot of variation when the interventions are applied for other things. Say, for example, educational intervention, behavioral intervention. I have done a health education session and skill session to change a particular person's behavior. Is an RCT only, but still the intervention will have a lot of variation because there is no standardization. Something like drug where the dose can be fixed, where the duration can be fixed, where the frequency can be fixed, or where the treatment plan is fixed. In this kind of educational intervention, behavioral change intervention, though RCT in nature, but kind of quality of systematic review and meta-analysis may or may not be possible. And that's why if it comes to the preference, I will again prefer a drug or device kind of intervention much over a school-based education or a educational intervention or behavioral intervention, because it will challenge the systematic review with a lot of quality issues, because there can be n number of ways different educational interventions can be planned. There are n number of ways by which so-called behavioral change mechanism or health communication can be planned. Next billion-dollar question for all of us is the original research. A systematic review and meta-analysis is the original research. Yes, because it involves a methodology. It involves with the start of the review of literature, come to a planned objective which is controversial, plan a methodology in the form of a PICO with a time, with a study design, plan the outcomes, and then plan a statistical design, write a protocol. Unless it's a patient data analysis, we need not go to ethics committee. Registration of Prospero, complete protocol is agreed upon, preferably published if possible, and then start the data collection. All those things involve similar to an original research design of an RCT or a case control or a cohort or any observational nature. And that's why we need to understand a properly done systematic review with or without meta-analysis is an original research. Some of the journals consider under original research some of the journals classically put under the reviews, some people classically put under systematic reviews. But whatever said and done, a systematic review which is done systematically with the planned protocol, objective methodology and analysis is an original research. And that's why always planned protocol is very, very important. Last time in the previous session, sir has talked about n number of softwares. Revman is a software which I personally like. It is available free of cost, and many of the Cochrane reviews are done on the Revman. It is only possible for RCT where the data can be entered. And I again repeat, please don't worry about the software. Please try to understand what is the philosophy behind systematic review. When a meta-analysis to be done, when meta-analysis not to be done, when the heterogeneity is present, when clinical heterogeneity is present, when statistical heterogeneity is present, and how to handle this clinical, methodological and statistical heterogeneity. When are the situation when you could do subgroup analysis, and when are the situation where you cannot do meta-analysis, and you give implication for your practice and research, that these are the study variations, and a proper planning of a better next study is very, very eye opener rather than just doing meta analysis for a systematic review. And software can become a child play. Software should behave like a servant to me rather than owner, and I should not too much worry on the use of the software. There are tools and the guides and the video tubes, video lectures are available which can help us. Now coming back to the last word on meta-analysis, this is similar to word which was published in earlier journal. This slide I have taken from Dr. Nitya Gokte, who used this in one of our presentation, and just I took the picture, and I am acknowledging her for her one of the important thing on this aspect, and she is one of the great teacher, and I was happy that I got trained under her during my undergraduation times. And this is the article which she quoted, which is an article published in 2005. It says that a mistake in the operating room can threaten the life of one patient. A mistake in the statistical analysis or interpretation can lead to hundreds of early deaths. So perhaps it is odd that while we allow a person to conduct a surgery only after several years of training, but give, I have hidden the word here, it applies to any kind of statistical software. It applies to any kind of meta-analysis software to almost everyone. And by doing a poor quality of systematic review, and most important, poor quality of meta-analysis or poor use of any statistical software will threaten the life of so many patients, including us, our family members, and also our future generations, including children and grandchildren. And that's why we have to be very, very cautious when we plan, for that matter, any study, more particularly with systematic reviews and meta-analysis, and looking at only on diamond without looking anything other than the diamond, and start practicing what the diamond says. Thank you very much. I hope I tried to cover only the basic concepts and intentionally did not go to the statistical complication of meta-analysis, because once I know the basic concept, doing a meta-analysis is child's play. Thank you, with the acknowledgement to all of you, all the training which I got from my teachers, and all of you for the patient audience and for the invitation. And disclaimer, we are not here as an expert. We are in the learning phase, and it's just our beginning of doing a systematic review and meta-analysis, and lot of things to be learned as we move ahead. And the time will teach us what is a comprehensive meta-analysis in future. A time will teach us what is a patient data meta-analysis, how the network meta-analysis can be changed, and is going to play a bigger role in a COVID kind of scenario where all the drugs cannot be tried against each other, and network meta-analysis is going to be valuable. And finally, the most important, the quality of meta-analysis and systematic reviews have to be also looked into in the form of overviews and umbrella overview. And finally, the most important, the software and the guidelines have to be getting updated. Last time sir talked about the Cochrane guidelines, Prisma guidelines and all those updated guidelines, we have to keep looking into it, and updates of those systematic reviews and meta-analysis is also very, very important. Thank you very much. And sorry for not taking too much on the statistical detail, but I still believe in the author which I looked into and read. First 5 chapters should be on the concepts, and only the next 5 chapters should talk on the mathematical detail, which can be done even by another member of the team. And that's why the research team is very, very important, where the clinical expertise come into picture, where methodological expertise come into picture, and the statistical expertise also can come, where the statistical calculation can be done by those person, and we may not be expert in all the things. Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there are a few questions in the chat box. I will read it out, sir. Sir, sir, we can't hear you, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
There is one question. Is there a sampling of
Sir, your voice is very low.
Now coming to that question, as I told you, heterogeneity is the thing which research teams look at it. That means if I believe apples are
Not audible.
Sir, not audible, sir. Sir, Pankaj, sir. Voice
audible,
is not audible, sir.
am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Now it's clear, sir.
Now coming back to the heterogeneity. If I believe that oranges are different, apples are different, I am very happy. And that's why the eyes of the research person is very, very important, or research team. But if I feel that American apple is different than Shimla apple, if the Nagpur oranges are different than the other oranges, then heterogeneity is coming into picture. And that's why research team is very, very important. If I feel that, say for example, here preventing something is going to change geographically, then I need to do a multiple subgroup analysis depending on the different geography. And finally, for me, is diamond is not important. For me, is the important why multiple geographical regions are giving me different meta-analysis or different values to find out what the probable risk factors or probable preventive factors which help me in identification. And that's why heterogeneity is very, very carefully assessed and not just looking at it. There is n number of ways the heterogeneity can creep in the picture. One of the example is even the geographical region, and you need to find out. Now there is a question of what is statistical heterogeneity. There are two ways the statistical heterogeneity can come into picture, as I told you during my talk. Number one, by looking at the article, some have given mean, some has given standard deviation, some has given odds ratio, all kind of multiple permutation combination is there. But the most important statistical heterogeneity means when I am sure clinically the studies are combinable, when the methodological studies are combinable, and I apply the meta-analysis, enter the data in the software, and the chi-square or the I-square is very, very high. The I-square is a calculation which we do something similar to the chi-square when there are multiple studies which are very widely giving the answers because of either their point estimates are different, or their confidence interval is different, or their sample size is different, leading to a different kind of an interpretation, and that kind of a varied interpretation in different studies leading to statistical heterogeneity. Minimum how many number I already told about.
Sir, not audible, sir. Pankaj, sir.
Investigate the heterogeneity and coming to those things rather than directly jumping on the meta-analysis table and prepare a forest plot with two studies. Can we include multi-center studies? Yes, any kind of studies can be involved. And when we have a multi-center studies, there are need to understand there can be a duplicate publications. Say there is one multi-center study done or multi-country study done. And also different centers have published their own studies. In such cases, we need to avoid the duplicate.
Sir, Pankaj, sir.
Study methodological and physical heterogeneity is important. Say, for example, a study done in USA has a more geriatric patient. A study done in India has more adult patient. Even if it's a multi-center study and a single publication has come with overall together, I cannot use that raw data because there's two kind of populations are different. I need to contact the author if there's a possibility of getting a US data separately and Indian data separately. So all kind of studies you can take together in meta-analysis, but the most important concept to remember is, are they clinically different? Are they methodologically different? Are they statistically different? If they are not different, then wherever they have done, whichever way they are done, till the time they are matching in these three factors, they can be included in meta-analysis. Minimum number we have talked about. Now, whenever we do the meta-analysis, we are happy that the software takes care of the point estimate, the confidence interval, and the sample size into the nature. and appropriate weightage is given while doing the meta-analysis. Again, is more mathematical concept how the weightage is calculated, and probably at this stage we may not be able to discuss because it will need lot of discussion. But what happens is, suppose a study is done with 200 patients, a study is done with 20 patients, and study is done with 2000 patients. The appropriate weightage will be given while calculation of the meta-analysis, so that the proper weightage will be used for calculation of the final meta-analysis. Link of the software can be given to the participant. You can just type in the Google search. When we have Google, I don't think so we need to have anybody else in the hypothetical sense. You can just type Revman, REVMAN, and you will get n number of links from where you can download Revman. And as last time sir had suggested, there are so many other softwares, and people may decide to use another software depending on the type of study design or type of the things can be done. As I told you, Revman doesn't probably permit other than the RCTs. If you want to do a comprehensive meta-analysis, again, it is not possible in Revman. If I want to do a meta-analysis with respect to case control cohort and other kind of observational studies, probably it is not possible. And also, if I want to do network meta-analysis, no good user-friendly software is available at present, and we may have to have a so-called understanding of the programming language and create that kind of a program. Validity of meta-analysis based on the number of studies included meta-analysis, your comment. Finally, I'll prefer, so the number of studies for combining in the form of a statistical compilation or summarizing in the meta-analysis is important. I'll be still more worried about the clinical similarity in them. The methodological similarity is them. And if I go still above in the hierarchy to find out if that question which I decided to do a systematic review is a controversial or not. If it's not a controversial, I just want to find out what are the treatment in diabetes. Just I'm doing a systematic review, but it's not going to solve major problem unless I say the treatment A is better than treatment B in case of diabetic with neurological complication. It has to have a pinpoint question, which is a controversial. Then only the validity of the systematic review and meta-analysis is really good. Otherwise, for publication sake or for our kind of a work for academic work, we can do n number of systematic reviews and meta-analysis. But unless it is going to give me implication for my practice tomorrow, or it is going to give me an implication for planning a better research design or research studies tomorrow, the validity of the systematic review and meta-analysis is very, very limited. I think that is the last question. Dr. Jawar, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is the last question, sir.
Any other thing? If Dean sir or Dr. Jawar or Vishnu sir or Mahalakshmi madam wants to comment, please comment.
Yeah, Dr. Pankaj, it was an excellent, very explicit things you made clear. No, just one small query. Publication bias is also one of the things, which will come in the way or the controversial as regards to validity of the meta-analysis is concerned. How can we avoid the publication bias?
Can you repeat, sir? Sorry, I could not hear.
See, for the publication bias, the tendency of any of these journals to publish, the editor's preference for publishing the positive outcome articles as against the negative outcome articles.
Okay. Sir, it's difficult to get away from the publication bias. But if there are particular set of studies, like say, just take the example of same diabetes with multiple interventions. Okay, what I will do is I'll try to look at all the literature possible. I will go to the cross references of those articles which I have selected. I will try to contact those authors if they are aware about any other study. I will also look at the conference proceedings of the various conferences which are happening on that particular topic in India and around, and try to talk to those people who have done the similar kind of the work to find out if there are other negative studies. But whatever said and done, we will have some limitation in case of a publication bias. And that's why now many journals have come out with a negative journal of negative studies, where even the negative studies are being published. And even in the positive publication, many times the primary objectives are not published. The objectives which are confirming with P less than 0.05 or statistically or significance or clinically relevant, only those are being published, though they are not primary or secondary objective. So in that case, It is very, very difficult, but we can try to contact all those people who are pioneers in those kind of study designs or those drugs, or we can talk to those authors, look at the conference proceedings, try to contact multiple people to get that kind of unpublished data. But whatever said and done, there'll be always some limitation of getting all kind of unpublished data, specifically when that is a negative in nature. But we can make all our attempts to get all kind of unpublished data possible by contacting all those people. And that's why when we look at the RCT, it is very good when the CTR registration has to be done. So very unlikely any kind of a RCT which will get missed as far as the author or the research team contact is there. And then we can try to say, for example, same diabetic study with one intervention, I can go to clinicaltrial.gov, I can go to CTRI and try to get all the kind of studies which are listed so far, and then contact those people who have not published so that we can get an unpublished literature. But other than CTRI or the RCT of drugs, other places getting all kind of unpublished studies may be difficult.
Difficult.
Not totally impossible, but we can make our best attempt. And in the article, we can describe to the reviewers and the reader very carefully what attempt we made while getting the unpublished literature, so that a reader is very well aware these were the attempts made, these were the attempts could not be made, and while taking those results in practice, they will be extra careful.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pankaj. One more, I like the example of you gave of your teacher. One mistake in the operation theater kills one patient, whereas one mistake in the meta-analysis will cost many lives. I really like that example. Well, you must be aware of a recent Lancet recommendation that was given to Indian second wave handling. Okay. And one of the recommendations that has been given by the Lancet Citizens Forum or Citizens Commission, I don't remember exactly, has recommended that, recommended to the government as well as central as well as state governments here in the country to follow these meta-analysis or valid guidelines. So with so much of mess or confusion around as regards the evidence is concerned during this pandemic, it is quite difficult, that to have which one, all the meta-analysis or systematic reviews as regards the therapy, as regards the prognosis or diagnosis of this COVID have been all messy, that all half-cooked data came out, all confusion was by our alternative systems of medicine, so many kinds of things. Any comment you can make on this?
Sir, I will leave the controversy away from it. I will say all quality of research will have their plus points as well as minus points. And hopefully in our lifetime, the pandemic comes only once. And I do not want to see this kind of pandemic one more in my lifetime. And we need to understand certain things which is routinely possible may not be possible to do in a pandemic time. And that's why so many fast track mechanisms are concerned. And we need to understand and believe that those fast track mechanisms are done with a good intention of the policy makers and scientific body. And when we talk about evidence-based medicine, we need to understand in a routine life without pandemic also, many times we have no evidence or we have a evidence misinformation. And in such a scenario, when it comes to pandemic, naturally, so much evidence may not be available truly, but till the time it is done with the best intention possible, we have to accept that. And I'll take it further from the same webinar of Dr. Gordon. The personal perception, the personal values, those are more important when it comes to this evidence. And many times we as a scientific community look at the science aspect or the evidence aspect of it, but we do not look at that. And taking back to his example, he was talking about the stroke. A patient may be a stroke aversive, patient may not be a stroke aversive. If I feel stroke, I do not want to take a chance and probably I will not take it as a treatment, but other group of people, they may. But this kind of pandemic, we have to believe in the good intention and carry on. There can be a lot of post-mortem or autopsy can be done once the incidence has happened. but it may not be the right way to come back. Always whatever was earlier done is not correct. Only we have to go from the earlier learning phase if we can learn something better from the earlier decision we make. If you see, so many things in any scientific topic has advanced from the day one, and that's why we always say science and the ethics are the dynamic things which are revolving. Something which was unscientific and unethical few decades back, still unethical, but few which were scientific and ethical few decades back be considered today as unethical. And since these are the evolving mechanism, we need to understand and go with the intention of the scientific and the governing body or the policy makers to accept the decision. And finally, giving the informed consent for the treatment is the patient and the patient's close relative choice as a guardian. And probably that has to be consideration, leaving all controversies away, how should a person should perform or should not is perform. This is something other than, also if I bring one more issue away from the topic, is a leadership in action is required. A leadership in action, leadership in action, and we have to believe that whatever is done by the leadership is in the right direction with the right intention, and we have to move with that whatever scientific body and the policy makers have decided with the best scientific nature. Other group of people may or may not accept it. That is the part of the science. No two scientists is agree always, and rather they always disagree. That's the commonest feature even in the non-epidemic or pandemic time. So we have to go with that, and we have to see the best interest possible, and leaving all controversies away from the Lancet publication, which gave a lot of aspects on the second wave. I hope I have tried to politically answer that question and not
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Pankaj. The problem, because instead of becoming dynamic, it become hyper-dynamic, everything. That was the problem. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And sir, we should not be surprised. After 10 years, post-mortem is done. And many of us who will be alive may see all the drugs which were tried in COVID were not worth. Or so many important drugs which could have been tried got missed. It can be both the ways, probably found out after 10 years. Possible.
Yes.
But only that kind of a post-mortem can help us in better learning for our future direction and future implication. But in this kind of a pandemic scenario, doing too much post-mortem may not be the worth scenario. We have to go and believe with the scientific evidence and the good intention of the policymakers and the scientific body, and go ahead with that, keeping in mind the patient's perception and their satisfaction and their preferences.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pankaj.
Very nice presentation, Dr. Pankaj. I think I appreciate continuously talking for almost 2 hours. Very nice. And one or two comments. Basically, we are doing research with others' research in meta-analysis. And you rightly said when systematic review and when meta-analysis can be done. When the data is qualitative, it is only systematic review is possible. We cannot do meta-analysis. So for meta-analysis, we do quantitative research. And as our dean was telling, this evidence-based medicine, most of the times will be based on meta-analysis and RCTs. Suppose if they are done a mistake somewhere, as you rightly put it, it may create problems. So what is science today may not be scientifically acceptable tomorrow, because our knowledge and thinking keep changing, which you are rightly put out. And I think on the whole, it was very nice, and I'm sure that our participants were benefited by that, your talk.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving such a clear and crisp presentation on meta-analysis in medical literature. It was indeed a very informative session for us. Thank you. Thanks a lot for answering the queries also raised by our participants. To all the participants, yes, sir.
The details of the books on statistics.
Yes, sir.
The start of talk.
Sir, we cannot hear you, sir.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
There is one question. Kindly share the details of the books on statistics you are mentioning at the start of your talk. if I want to really learn systematic reviews and meta-analysis, to be very honest, there are only two things I want to read. Number one is the Cochrane guidelines. Okay, and to start with Cochrane guidelines, those guidelines runs in 100 of pages. If I'm not wrong, the latest edition of Cochrane guidelines moves more than 600 or 700 pages. And each line, each word is very, very important. So probably we can look at initial aspects and slowly go into the deeper aspects when we are doing a particular aspect of the systematic review or particular kind of studies. That is one aspect. Second thing is, you can probably read the journal articles which are published on this topic in the form of a summary or opinion. And with respect to statistics, if general statistics, there are n number of books are available. One of the book which I can quote very nicely, very, very simple and very easy to understand on pure statistics, is the Statistics at Square One, which is available in BMJ free of cost on the BMJ website. You can just type in the Google Statistics at Square One. That is one of the good book on pure statistics. And with comes to the meta-analysis, again I'll prefer the Cochrane handout to be the best book. And once we have read thoroughly that Cochrane handout, then we can look at other books. There in Cochrane also they have talked about other study designs and all, but they have kept their own ways of doing and reservations, and depending on what we are doing. That's why it may not be good idea to read all 700, 800 pages of Cochrane book and then decide, or read complete statistics. Plan something, and that planning you can read those things in detail at each step to get a clear and get more experience and skill on doing that. Because it may be very impossible to read so much of literature which is available on different reviews. And if we go back to the previous session, sir had shared a lot of resources. It may be very difficult for a human mind and a human to go through so much literature at all the time. And that's why probably you can start as a baby step and slowly move into more and more deeper component rather than looking at one particular book or particular. Because unfortunately, for a particular topic, a single book may not be good. Say, for example, a particular topic is very nicely given in one book. A second particular topic may be given very nicely in another book. And that's why probably a piecemeal learning in the beginning may be very good. But basically, if pure statistics, you are looking a Statistics at Square One, beginning with respect to BMJ website is good. And with respect to systematic review and meta-analysis, a Cochrane handout is the best beginning sort, along with the Prisma guideline, which is very, very important.
Thank you, sir. I think there are no more questions in the chat box, sir. There are no more questions, sir. Right. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dean sir. Thank you, Vishnu sir.
Thank you.
Madam. Thank you, Jawahar sir. And all the audience, thank you very much for patience.
Thank you, Pankaj. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. So to all the participants, the feedback link will be sent to your registered mail IDs along with the link for Tuesday's program. Please fill up the feedback form today itself. The next session will be day 4 session scheduled on 13th July between 2 to 4 p.m. And the topic will be qualitative research methods and tools. And the speaker is Dr. Mahalakshmi, Professor, Department of Community Medicine from Jipmer, Puducherry. The program will be hosted by Dr. Ilankathir, Professor from Department of Anatomy and a member of IRC. Once again, I thank you all for participating in this program. Thank you. We can sign off now.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.